UNC and UCF are both in need of offensive identity. Is this the weekend Geo Lopez figures it all out?
This is Kamori House, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, September 18th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listener watch to get your team every day. Special shout out to all the everydayers, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and our Locked On Tar Heels insiders as well. Welcome in. Glad you're all here. Come join us. Those links are in the show notes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Download it today. Coming up on the show, I first want to let you know, make you aware that we have another show today. This is a bonus episode, a crossover with Locked On UCF's Mike Gittens. And so today's full Locked On Tar Heels show is myself and Coach Rob. We're 7 weeks out from the basketball season, so we're looking at number 7, Seth Trimble, playing a game of buy, sell, or hold. A lot of fun. Make sure to check that out. So Mike and I are getting together today. We'll have another one actually tomorrow. We're going to have 2 crossovers. Today we're diving into kind of the offensive struggles of both teams and ultimately who needs this win more. Let's get right into it.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF and Locked On Tar Heels. It's a Locked On crossover. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. Turn us up, turn us on, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend Isaac Schade of Locked On Tar Heels to talk a little UCF and UNC football. Isaac, this game is probably one of the more interesting games. Scott Frost returns to Orlando for a second stint there with the Knights, but Super Bowl winning Bill Belichick has decided to come to the college ranks and try his hand at P4 football. Look, on today's show, we're going to break down UNC, and I know you're going to do a great job educating everybody on what UNC is, who they are, and what we can expect in this football game. Then we'll talk about the UCF offensive identity or lack thereof. And then on the last part of the show, we'll talk about which team needs this more. Let's start at the top. Breaking down UNC. Bill Belichick is there, and obviously he's a defensive head coach. Known from his time at the Patriots that they have always been kind of like a solid defensive football team. But he had in my mind, the greatest quarterback of all time at the helm. So offense was never a problem there as they won multiple Super Bowl championships. But the college is a different beast, man. And, this reach for Belichick, every school is in search of their next dynamic coach. Is Bill Belichick the guy for UNC? And what's the feeling there in Chapel Hill about his arrival?
What's so funny, Mike, to me about this game in particular is literally the night that Carolina finally formally announced that they were hiring Bill Belichick was on the eve of a family trip down to Disney World. I was already packed. I was ready. We were surprising our kids the next day. We hadn't told them. And I was like, literally any other night but this night, right? We had known about the news for about a week, and it was like, okay, fine. I'll figure out what I got to do before I go on this trip. Well, now Bill Belichick is going to Disney World, coming down to Orlando. And the thing is, it's funny, you kind of mentioned it in the intro about UCF trying to work at figuring out their offensive identity. I think that is the bucket both of these teams are currently in. And so the Bill Belichick experiment at a grand level, I think ultimately will be successful. I know there's a lot of people who don't think it will be. There's just too much movement. There's too much players already committed for the 26 class. There's too much good stuff and people that want to come be a part of it for, in my mind, to see it fail, especially because if you can establish that defense over the period of time, ultimately that's going to win you some football games. The problem, go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead. You said
I was just going to say the problem right now for this season in particular is that Coach Belichick came in after the portal had already opened. They bring in 70 new players, and in the NCAA, there's just not the level of time that you get at the NFL level to be able to get to what I would say is the level of discipline and details that a Bill Belichick coach team thrives on, right? And so you're seeing some of that defensively and in some other realms. But the problem as we start to look at Carolina's offense is that Geo Lopez is a quarterback that came in after spring ball, is transferring up to the Power 4 level, is trying to figure out a new playbook and scheme, and really has only had fall camp to work in close proximity with all these coaches. And so he's learning on the job because you ain't got 4 preseason or 3 preseason games like you do in the NFL. And so Carolina, it feels like to me, is having to use non-con play, of which this wraps it up for them, this game this weekend, to be able to now set themselves up for ACC play. And that's the problem for North Carolina, and that's the problem for Geo Lopez.
Look, I do want to lock in on Geo Lopez here. There was an idea when Tom Brady left the Patriots that it was the system, and the system produced those championships, and he was a part of that system. Look, Tom Brady went down to Tampa and won himself a Super Bowl.
Yes, he did.
And New England struggled after that. But, a lot of people felt like he was, in some ways, kind of lucky to have a Hall of Fame quarterback at the helm of those championships. He's got to find his guy, and it's going to be more cyclical, right? Like at the college level, where you got to find a new guy every 2 years if you're producing top level quarterbacks. Is there a sense that he's going to be able to adjust to what the college game is today, especially at a college that really is a basketball school for the most part?
It is a basketball school, but here's what's funny, Mike. Let's think recent history and context at North Carolina. Mac Brown comes back. Right out of the gate, he flips Sam Howell from Florida State. Sam Howell is at North Carolina for a couple years, and you don't have to worry about the offense. Then comes Drake May, funny enough, who's now the New England Patriots QB1, and he has a phenomenal 2 years. But the problem then was Carolina's defense was so bad, so you had to outscore everyone you played. So those 5 years for Carolina was like, offense is going to be good. We're going to figure that out because we've also, by the way, got Javonte Williams and Michael Carter, et cetera, Josh Downs, et cetera, et cetera. And then last year, things kind of fall off at quarterback. Carolina has 4 different starting quarterbacks and really have to ride Omarion Hampton. And so the identity shifted from QB1 to RB1. And then this year, as you come into it, it's Geo Lopez. You've paid him the money, so you got to go with it. And you're trying to figure out all of these pieces along with quarterback. Who is going to be our stud receiver? Who is going to be our stud running back? Who is going to, et cetera, and on and on and on. And can the line hold up? Every bit of that offense is in question. It's not just Geo, but it's got to start there, because if your quarterback can't rein it in and figure it out, then you're in trouble. So yes, absolutely, Mike. Carolina, both this year and I think beyond, is going to have to be able to figure out who is Bill Belichick's Tom Brady in Chapel Hill. If he can get that guy consistently, then he's going to be in good shape. If not, the Chapel Hill Bill Chapel Thrill experiment might not go so well.
I agree with you 100%. Look, let's stick with Geo Lopez here, because I'm not sure that he's the guy.
I'm not either, Mike. I'm not either.
The South Alabama transfer comes in, and you had him and Max Johnson kind of split snaps versus TCU to open the season here. It's been Geo Lopez the last couple games, and the stats have been rough. As a matter of fact, the UNC offense dead last right now, a few weeks in the ACC in total offense. What can UCF expect from this UNC offense here come Saturday?
Great question. Let's go back to that TCU game to put some context around that split of the quarterback responsibilities. It was Geo Lopez's game. Max Johnson only came in when Geo Lopez got hurt and went out. At that point, they rocked with Max Johnson the rest of the game. What's interesting about Max Johnson, and he is firmly and solidly QB2, is that he's a guy with multiple SEC stops of experience and wins that came in and was QB1 for North Carolina starting last year. He had a gruesome leg injury to start the year in week 1 up at Minnesota, and then everyone assumed he was done. He fought his way back and was ready for camp this season, but I think he was so far behind the sticks, if we can use that football analogy, that he just couldn't get ready to go. And so Geo Lopez wins the job. They're clearly trying to ride with him and figure out if they can make him be the guy. And so played the entirety of the Charlotte game week 2, played the entirety of the Richmond game week 3. My full expectation, Mike, and we've heard nothing different from Bill Belichick this week in the lead up, is that it will once again be Geo Lopez's game, and they're not looking aside and like, oh, 2 series, and if it doesn't go well, you're out. I fully expect them to continue to ride Geo Lopez because next week, Mike, forecasting ahead, is an off week before Clemson comes to town to start ACC play. My thought is it's during that off week when they reevaluate and look at this 4-game sample size to determine if Geo Lopez, who has QBRs in his 3 games, you ready for this, of 1.5, 40, and 31.3.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Drake May, who literally never had a QBR under 40 in his last year at North Carolina. So the numbers, as you said, are not good at all for Geo Lopez. CFB Numbers put out a great little graph earlier this week, and go see where he falls. And it is not good. So I fully expect, though, Geo to still be the guy this week so they can figure it out. The problem is I don't think that's going to be good enough, to be quite frankly honest with you, Mike, as they come down. But it's a non-conference game, and so it's a game that, while it matters, it's the conference games that they really have their focus and eyes and attention on.
The quarterback carousel is such a fickle thing, Isaac. We talked about Max Johnson and Geo kind of splitting snaps there in game 1. Look, UCF started the season with another guy at quarterback, and before the end of the second quarter, they're on to QB2, who is now QB1 for the Knights. We're going to talk in the next segment about that UCF offensive identity right after a quick word from our sponsor.
Right after I tell you about DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. So let's break it down who it is. For North Carolina, last week, it was Damon Juju June delivering in a big way. In his first career start, he rushed 14 times for 148 yards and another catch for 19 more yards. When the pressure was on, this true freshman came through. No hesitation and no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, you saw this building up, and you know this performance wasn't a fluke. June is on a hot streak. And just like he delivered for the Tar Heels, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. And the promo code runs all the way through November 18th. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. One of the great things about FanDuel is that it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, so whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, it's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sunday. Right now, UCF is favored by 6.5 over North Carolina. If you want to get in on that action, you're ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Once again, that's FanDuel.com.
Who is UCF on offense? Everybody's searching for an identity early in the season. And under a new coach, because North Carolina is going through it, as UCF is, albeit a coach they're familiar with. This UCF offense named Cam Fancher the starter for game 1. They did a poor job protecting him, but he also did not look great. Tayven Jackson comes in and he goes 17 for 24 for a bunch of TDs and saves UCF from an embarrassing week 1 loss versus Jacksonville State. Now, that's a Charles Kelly coached team, so I expected them to be tough defensively, but I don't think I expected the game to be that close. Yeah. Sometimes, Isaac, evaluating a player in practice is not a perfect science. So the guy who wins it may not be a gamer. And that's how you end up on another guy. So we talked about Geo Lopez in the first second. It's Tayven Jackson for UCF. In what could be a duel of offenses searching for an identity, I think UCF has the advantage here at quarterback with Tayven over Geo. And no disrespect to UNC, but I don't think this particular matchup is close.
Yeah, Mike, it's so interesting because UCF has done what I believe Carolina should have done, right? Like going into week 2, I was calling for Max Johnson to be QB1. And so I love that Scott Frost is like, we see the writing on the wall. We see what's happening in the game. Let's rock with it. And now they've done it, right? And I get it. It's, as you've said, for UCF, it's kind of hard to know yet because the only 2 games are Jacksonville State and NCANT, right? And so this will be the first P4 matchup after a week off for the Knights. But man, I'm with you because of Carolina's complete lack of identity offensively so far. At least UCF has something for some identity for on the offensive side of the football. And so, Mike, coming into game 3 now for Jackson, what are your expectations as the competition levels up, quite frankly?
When you're if you don't have your guy at quarterback, right, it's hard to know who you are on offense because so much of it is centered around that quarterback's capability, his skill sets, his handle on the offense, his ability to be able to go through his reads and progressions, but also handle multiple levels of what probably is a pretty complicated offense if Bill Belichick is coming in. Now, he was fortunate to have Tom Brady, a guy who was not only physically capable, but also capable between the ears. And it's so much of a learning curve for a lot of these QBs. I feel like when you match these teams up, one thing that you said that stuck with me in our first segment was the amount of players that UNC brought in. Right through the portal. We saw Colorado do something similar,
Exactly.
where they brought in
Prime's first year.
like 70 something players from the portal. It can be a little dicey. And look, they had their guy at quarterback, so they had a lot of potential in year 1, but ultimately that lack of cohesiveness, I feel like, caught up with them as they played teams that were more mature and more together. In UCF's first year, I think you've got that same challenge that UNC has where you're trying to get guys to gel and play together. And, it feels like UCF is a little bit further along in that process.
Agreed.
Scott Frost described it this offseason like trying for the players offensively, like trying to learn another language and becoming fluent in another language. And and then you immerse them in that environment. You find out like, hey, like, maybe my Spanish is not as well as I thought it was because I ordered a hamburger and they came out with a chicken sandwich. But if you're UCF, this offense is limited by the understanding that the players have of the concepts. And if you're the coach, I think both coaches, you have to have a good handle on how much of the offense, the players understand, because it's going to limit what you can run in this game. I look at UNC, man. There's talent there.
There's
talent there, right? But it's not always about how talented you are. In year 1, Belichick, like Frost, is going to be trying to lay a foundation for what this program is going to be, and then put something on tape that recruits can say, yes, I want to be a part of that.
That's 100% correct. And, I think a lot of people might be thinking, yeah, but for UCF, it's Scott Frost. He's back. They won a national championship under Scott Frost, right? But it's like, yeah, but that's been a minute. And the NCAA landscape has changed just a little bit since that time while he was off in Nebraska, right? And so, Mike, I feel like it's unfair for people to put that on either Coach Frost or this team, that they should immediately be able to refigure out who he is and what he's expecting of them, right?
Yeah, I do. I do think that. But it's a different game as well, too, with the portal and with NIL. Now,
and the house settlement now as well.
Oh, I'm telling you, look, there's not a ton of money in the UCF NIL coffers. So much so that they eliminated the Kingdom, which was their collective, and they consolidated it all into the Competitive Success Fund, which draws on that $20.5 million that's available to schools in year 1 that they control directly. But if you cannot get the players, if you don't have more there was a game this weekend. We talked about this earlier this week. I was locked to my TV Saturday afternoon, and I came across Georgia, Tennessee.
Yeah,
Tennessee's
man.
up is rolling at home, and Georgia looked overwhelmed. And I thought to myself, I was like, man, could this be the end of that? I feel like championships come in windows for teams when you have the players and you've got the schedule and you've got the setup. And recruiting won because Georgia never got down. They never got rattled, and they needed a little help from that missed kick, but they came back
Sure.
and they won that game. Their players have a belief that they're going to win every game that they play. And if you're Scott Frost or Bill Belichick, you're trying to build that belief in year one. Now, I talked about this on yesterday's show. Sometimes that belief looks like delusion to other fan bases. However, it's all you have to sell, Isaac, in year one before you have proof of concept.
That's right. And that proof of concept, man, that is, I cannot tell you how many times I've used that phrase this offseason, especially as you were talking about, like, you got to be able to put stuff on tape for recruits and others to see. And, you know, I know we'll talk more about this in segment 3 in the who needs this game more kind of thing. But man, as you're trying to prove to your fan base, to yourselves, to recruits, to donors and everyone else that it's not just delusion, that's a thing. And so you almost have to buy into the delusion and just say, this is who we are, and then speak it into existence. And I mean, to put a scoreboard thing on it, the team that's able to figure that out more capably this weekend, especially as we're talking in both of these first 2 segments about lack of offensive identity to this point, the team that does that more capably is going to find themselves going to bed happier on Saturday evening.
You couldn't agree more. This is who we are, right? You remember that? You remember that scene from Black Panther? Where T'Challa is fighting M'Baku and he's losing. He's got like thrown off the waterfall. His mom goes, "Tell him who you are." If you're Scott Frost, if you're Bill Belichick, I think this is a good opportunity against a Power 4 opponent, non-conference, to show people who you are. Are you going to be a team that fights to the end, shows heart and grit, despite maybe the lack of talent that the top of each conference has? Or are you going to be a team that lays down, takes it when the chips get down? But look, that leads us to our last topic of this show. Which team needs this game more? This is a very nuanced and layered subject. We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors.
Right after I tell you about Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 25. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings that same level of intentionality to how they craft every model. You can feel that incredible Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Because with Mazda, everyday drives, they feel like anything but, from smooth handling all the way to the intuitive controls. Like our players for the Tar Heels, Mazda sweats every detail. Because when you make every move count impossible, that becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
Who needs this game more? There was a thought before the season by a lot of the experts, not me, that UCF would struggle to make a bowl game. And now in week 3, you have a chance before conference play to be halfway to that goal. And I think this is a big game for UCF. They've got a quarterback recruit. His name is Kane Archer. Fantastic kid. We interviewed him here on this show. And look, he seems pretty committed to UCF. However, he's rising the recruiting rankings right now. As a matter of fact, Rivals named him to their preseason All-American list. He was the only 3-star to make Rivals preseason All-American list. I have a sneaking suspicion he's going to be a 4-star before it's all over. But the reason I'm mentioning this is games like this signal to Kane Archer that he made the right decision if you can win it. Because if you can say to a guy like Kane, if we had you, we win this game or we look this much better, right? I think it's an easier recruiting pitch before you have proof of concept. And this is a chance to put that concept on paper and just say, look, man, with better athletes, this is a better program. I brought up the Georgia-Tennessee game in our last segment because, my good friend Josh Pate says this to me all the time. He said, when Nick Saban was still coaching, he said, you're not going to out-develop Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. You got to have as many dogs as they have if you expect to win. And if you're Scott Frost, the money can't be the excuse that you don't get the dogs in the door, man. So go out, put a good game plan together, utilize the talent you have to the best of your ability, and motivate these guys to go out and get this game. I think that, quite personally, UCF in a conference where they feel way behind needs this game a little more than UNC does right now.
What's interesting, Mike, is I would actually tend to agree with you, and I want to explain why. You said in the last segment, this is a nuanced conversation.
Yeah.
Here's my Carolina nuance on that. The Tar Heels were flat out embarrassed on national TV on Labor Day in a standalone game with God and all the world watching. They go out the next weekend, take care of business at Charlotte, true road game at Charlotte. Who does that? And then blasted Richmond last week. It's an FCS opponent. They did what they got to do. We'll talk about this. We're going to have another show, and I'll bring up some of the numbers of how things have been climbing. So that's just a little foreshadowing for everyone. But North Carolina has been making progression in a lot of key areas other than quarterback, as we talked about earlier in the show. But Mike, here's the key for North Carolina. They went into obscurity after that TCU game to play Charlotte, a lower level FBS team, and Richmond, an FCS team. What North Carolina simply needs to do on Saturday is not get embarrassed again on national TV. Let's remember this game is on Fox. And I don't mind saying, I think that's because of the Bill Belichick factor, right? No disrespect to North Carolina or to Florida. This game is not a Fox game if not for Bill Belichick. I think that is the reason they made that call. But ultimately, what the Tar Heels need to do is show that over the course of the last 2 weeks, they have made strides to put themselves in better position to win a football game. Obviously, you want to win that football game. But for me, and covering this team and thinking about the fan base and what they're processing, it's about going out and playing a competitive football game and putting yourself in position to be able to win it coming out of halftime or going into the fourth quarter, or maybe a last drive where you feel like you have a shot. Right now, the thing I feel best about is North Carolina's defense. They've shown up in a big way, haven't allowed a touchdown either of the last 2 weeks, Mike. But again, Charlotte and Richmond. So this is an opportunity to say, is that something real? Or was the 40 plus points you gave up to TCU, was that real?
You're right.
That's what we're going to find out. And so for North Carolina, obviously they want to win, but it's a true road game. You're 6.5 point dogs. So I actually tend to agree with you in terms of the actual W on the scoreboard. I think it matters more for UCF, but for Carolina, they need to simply be competitive against a Power 4 opponent.
I agree. I think there's something to be gained for both teams in a loss, Isaac.
That's right. That's a great
competitive, call. Right? You can't don't lay down to anybody. Show fight, show heart, show that you're close to something special, and that can be a powerful thing in terms of generating hope for a fan base and an alumni base that you need to donate to your NIL so that you can compete. Look, man, when hope is lost, again, something we talk about on the show often, when hope is lost, coaches get fired, right? Coaching changes happen because you've got to feel like there's hope. And last year, although UCF went 4-8, man, they should have beat Arizona State. They were in there versus Iowa State. There were some games on the schedule that they could have won despite the offense being a complete mess. I have said that I think that coaching should be good for 2 games, which gets them to a bowl game in year 1 and lays the foundation for what UCF can be moving forward. It's going to be a fun Saturday. Look, we're going to come back later this week right here on Locked On UCF, Locked On Crossover, Locked On Tar Heels to talk more UCF versus UNC.
Big thanks to Mike for a great crossover episode. Want to remind you, we're actually doing a second one that will drop tomorrow on Friday. And if you haven't gone to listen to today's other Locked on Tar Heels episode, that's myself, Coach Rob, talking about Seth Trimble. We're playing a game of buy, sell, hold. A lot of fun. I encourage you to go check that out as well. If you haven't joined the Locked on Tar Heels Discord, that link's in the show notes. We'd love for you to come be part of that great community of Tar Heel fans. Seriously, it's incredible. And if you want to go even deeper with the show, one-on-one communication with me, free access to all of my stats, charts, data, that link is also in the show notes. Subscribe if you haven't done so, both on video and audio. You guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Can't wait to be together tomorrow to get ready for the game and other weekend stuff. Anthony Pagnotta will be joining me. Gonna be great. But until then, peace.